This is the Partner for Leads Biz podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs. It's a podcast for those of you who want to build your business in a smarter, relationships-first way. Welcome to episode 3, season 2 of the podcast. I'm your host, Roberto Hernandez. The intro music you're hearing was composed and performed by my talented good friend and former bandmate, Frank Salazar. My guest, Charlotte Walter, is an engineer gone chocolatier. I love saying that. Her company, Charlotte Truffles, celebrates something beautiful, something that goes beyond truffles. Her story, as well as her career transition, are nothing short of fascinating. Her business is just entering its second year, and she's really on her game. As incredible as she may sound, though, in this intro and throughout our conversation, Charlotte is not without her moments of self-doubt, which we talk about. This is a great conversation to hear if you're thinking about starting a business, but will also serve you well if you already have a business. The learnings and lessons are as prevalent as her passion for chocolate. Are you intrigued? I hope so. I thought that was a pretty good setup. Okay, here's me and Charlotte Walter.
After the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
Roberto Hernandez.
Hello, Roberto. This is Charlotte.
Hey, Charlotte. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Are you at the shop, so to speak?
Yeah.
I would like to start by mentioning to listeners what appears to be your tagline, which I love, and maybe you can, for the benefit of listeners, talk a little bit about it, but it is celebrating diversity through flavors.
Yeah, it is. That is my tagline. And so the way I came up with that was it actually kind of ties in on how I started my business and why I started my business. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just go back a little bit.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons was basically through an experience that I had when I was younger. So when I first moved here, I moved here in January of so a long time ago. And I moved here when I was 8 years old. So as you can imagine, when you move here, being an 8-year-old and you're moving in January, which means you're moving in the middle of the school year, and you are completely new to the culture. You can barely speak the language, and you're just trying to survive your first week of school, right? Or the first quarter of school, or whatever the case is. And I had a really challenging time just assimilating myself. There's so much that I had to kind of catch up with, quote unquote. And some of the students in the school, I guess, were not so kind because I was, a little bit different. And it just happened. Kids can be mean.
Yeah.
So kids can be sometimes a little bit more mean, but so it just happened that I was sitting next to this gal. Her name is Ashley, and she is an American, like just your normal white American. And she barely knew me. I barely know her. And whenever there's an incident where, children were somewhat toying me, she actually stood up for me. And so I was quite surprised by that whole incident because, I'm completely new. I don't know this girl, and she basically stood up to all the kids and to tell them to stop making fun of me. And we became friends. And ultimately, what she really taught me was the fact that being different is cool. And I should be proud of my uniqueness and my own history and my own culture. And that's kind of like how this has all stemmed. And then since that incident, I've lived my life accordingly. So I've always been very much interested in learning other people's culture, heritage, and like exploring different types of food. And then from the food, I'd love to hear stories of how that food is so important to the family or that particular culture. And so it just kind of catapults from that. And then and so when I made a decision that I wanted to start a business and a food business, I wanted to have a mission statement that's just more than your everyday mission. And I really wanted to kind of be a little bit more unique and something that's really relatable to me, and which is to kind of celebrate diversity. And what better ways to learn and celebrate diversity than through food? So, and that's kind of where the tagline came in.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I absolutely love the story. And for anyone who heard it and wants to read about it, you can check it out on charlottetruffles.com, your business website. And are you still in touch with Ashley?
No, unfortunately, this was pre-Facebook and everything. And so when I think like around sixth grade, she moved and we lost touch. We did meet once for a short period of time, but since then I've been trying to find her, but now I don't know what her last name is, and I don't know where she is, so it's very challenging to find her.
Well, I hope that you find one another one day.
Yes, I do too.
So the other fun thing about you, because of a mutual acquaintance, I learned this right away, but and I hope I know you haven't done well, I should say it this way. I know you've done some interviews, but it sounds like I'm one of the early ones, so it's written either on your website or and actually perhaps in one of your print interviews. But I love it, and it is from engineer to chocolatier. You have a pretty long career in it's not that long actually, but a past career in medical devices, as does our mutual friend. And I was reading that you were, to make it sound even more cool, I guess, biomedical engineer. So how did you? The story is just perfect. That kind of begins with school and Ashley. And by the way, I too, when I was 8 years old, made a move in the middle of school. Actually, it was at the beginning of school, but it was from Fort Worth, Texas to Arlington, Texas, and I spoke perfect English, so I didn't have nearly the hard time that you did. But I can imagine, because I remember
it's hard, right?
Yeah, I don't even think about it that much, but I can remember just the sort of fear about it all, and for someone who has the language barrier, and then you feel so different from everyone, although I was arguably different than a lot of folks too. But anyway, I can relate to a degree, But
yes.
So how can you connect the dots from engineering to chocolatiering for us?
I think there's, actually a lot of similarities between engineering and chocolatiering, and honestly, engineering to anything. Because what I learned from the engineering school and my practice working in medical device is that being an engineer, you have to be very, very observant and to be very driven in the sense of trying to determine what are some of your root cause and how to resolve it. So my particular practice was in manufacturing engineering and process engineering, and then later in life became more operations. And so what that consists of is you take an idea that's been proven and you basically start mass producing it for the public or for the demands of the sales. And in operations, you just want to make sure that you have your system properly vetted, meaning that you have your inventory and making sure that you work with the vendors and all those other things, and making sure it's aligned such that there is no delay. And if there is delay, how do you resolve it? And so, I still very much love engineering, and I still love medical device. And I think it just kind of helps me transition into the chocolatiering, because chocolate is pretty temperamental. So there's a lot of factors that can impact on how you temper chocolate and how it can be successful. And so there are a lot of issues that I ran into in the beginning, and I just kind of went into my quote-unquote engineering mode, and you just kind of look into all the factors that come into play, how to assess it, how to determine what would be the optimal factor settings. And so you kind of do all that stuff. So there's not really much of a difference. It's just that now I can eat my product versus before.
Sure. Well, it sounds like the specifics of your career path lend themselves beautifully to what you're doing. But still, when you think of engineer and chocolatier, someone who's a non-engineer, when you explain it, it makes perfect sense. It's like a perfect transition of a set of transferable skills. So that's pretty cool. I also noticed that I bring this one up because I would just happen across an article today about positive press or PR and how it can make your business. And haven't even finished the article yet, but I saved it. And while I was wolfing down some lunch, I thought I'm going to glance at that. And I want the first thing, tip in there was about applying for awards. I never thought of it, although I know it happens. But I noticed that you have gotten a number of awards and were recognized or interviewed or featured rather in the Silicon Valley Business Journal. I want to ask, did you find those opportunities deliberately, knowing what I just learned today or read about today, or did they find you?
So when it terms being featured in the Silicon Valley Business Journal, and actually I was also featured in the Santa Clara Weekly, they came to me. And so, but in regards to the competitions and the awards, I seek those out. And so I wanted to actually challenge myself. It's the reason why I competed, was to kind of figure out where I am in regards to all the chocolatiers and chocolate makers. And, it doesn't hurt that you win an award. And it also helps build your confidence that you're like, oh, I think I did the right thing here.
Yeah, and it looks really cool on your website. And like the article says, not his words, but it really gives you street cred. So I'm glad that I ran across that, and it gave me the mindset to ask the question in the way that I did, as opposed to just like, you got all these awards and whatever else I might have said, but that's cool to hear. And so your product is really beautiful on the inside and the outside. And on the outside, I mean all the way to the packaging. Did you have, were you the hands and creative ideas for packaging as well as the product inside?
So in regards to the packaging and the branding, which is the logo and the initial phases of the packaging, which is what you're seeing right now, I definitely work with a graphic designer. So the graphic designer, I kind of came to him and I gave him just a few blurbs of like what I want to see my company to be represented in terms of branding. And so he took that and he just did an amazing job. And I think this was like the second iteration of the branding that he did, and I just stuck with it. And then in terms of the actual packaging, when you're a small startup company, you're not going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on packaging when you're not even sure if it's, especially for me, if I wanted to pursue this more than 1 year, right? Because transitioning from careers, it's kind of challenging. So I basically looked into an off-the-shelf packaging, which this is one of them. And then from then, we worked together on how to create a more personal design and a design that relates to the branding that I want to carry.
Well, it looks pretty good already, and it may be because when I look at the website too, the product looks so beautiful, and so I just sort of imagine the whole thing together. And I was also, probably kind of personally curious about the packaging facet of it because years ago I worked with Frito-Lay and one day got to tour the plant, and I was so fascinated with the process of packaging, and it just and then later in life I'm in branding and design and it makes you realize how much goes into it. So I'm sure that's going to be a journey in and of itself, but it looks like you've gotten off to a great start.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and actually I kind of knew the idea of packaging from my medical device companies. And so, one of the first things that you do when you do proof of concept is you go come and think about the packaging. And I knew just how much labor intensive the packaging would be and how much investment you need to make in terms of money and time to ensure that it matches with your vision. And so when you're a startup you don't have all that time. You don't have all that money either. So,
Right.
so you're just kind of like, let's kind of pick something that is already off the shelf, something that would work. And then we would need to evolve as we grow. And so we'll wait and see.
So if you are listening and you're a fan of chocolate and truffles and sweet treats like that, you have a lot of great photos on Instagram, which is short for Charlotte, I'm sure, Char Truffles, CHAR Truffles, on Instagram. So if you're listening, check that out if you want to see what I'm talking about. It's pretty good stuff. Let's see. So I did not gather before our conversation today when you actually started the company. When was that?
I started it in December of 2016.
Okay.
So the company is a little over 2 years old, 2 years and some days. So, yeah.
Has much changed in terms of where you thought you would be selling and or marketing and where you are or where you see what you can see so far in the near term or beyond for the selling and marketing facet of your business?
So I think that vision has definitely evolved because when I first started my business, I wasn't fully sure like how big I wanted to be. People always talk about, when you start your business, think about where you want to be 3-5 years from now. But I'm a very cautious person. So being in an engineering mindset, I want to see data first before I can jump and loop.
Sure.
So the first year I was just like, let's just survive. Let's just see. Well, first, let's see if people resonate with our mission statement. People resonate with the way that the packaging works, with the product that I'm carrying. And then, let's just figure that out. And then if it doesn't resonate, that we need to figure it out. Because there is a difference about making your business a business versus a hobby, right? When you have a business and it's a hobby, you don't truly care as much how much money you're making. It's just all about the feel and all that stuff, right? But when you're running a business as a business, you need to make money because it's expensive to live in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I've also transitioned career, so there's always this looming idea, well, if I go back to engineering, look how much money I can make, right? So you're there's always that drive to make sure that you get it right. And so the first year I was just trying to survive. The second year I was trying to just expand and try to adjust from the feedback that I got. And then this year I'm actually focusing on seeking partnerships, whether it's with storefronts or with companies or with hotel industries, just larger partnerships where it doesn't require me to physically be at a site to sell. Because that is one of the bigger challenges that I'm starting to find out. Because a lot of the things that I do now is more of a pop-up or a farmer's market, and you don't sell when you're not there, right? But it's great to have that connection because you have that immediate feedback when you have a new product or a new packaging. So that's what I truly love in regards to pop-ups and farmer's market. But to a certain extent, it's not sustainable for a small business. So unless you're starting to seek or to expand your, your number of employees, but that's not an area that I want to kind of go with for right now because it can get pretty expensive, right? Like I said, it's expensive to live in the Bay Area.
Back to the Bay Area, right?
Yeah. So, and I don't want to hire somebody right now and realize, oh, it's not sustainable, and then I have to basically let them go because that's not a business that I want to, or a business model that I want to have. If I want to hire somebody, I want to make sure that I hire them for a long time, and it takes a while to make sure to educate your new employee to the culture, to the branding, and on how to run the business. And I don't want to just cut that and leave that, right? So going back, I wanted to kind of build more on that wholesale and the big partnerships. And if I continue to sustain it for a longer period of time, then that's when I'll start looking into hiring new employees.
And in the meantime, are the pop-ups and farmers market points of sale still happening, and will they continue to this year, depending how well the partnership things go?
Oh, I will continue to have it. I think it's a really good, like I said, it's a really good avenue to get immediate feedback. And I think nothing beats nothing beats the feedback or the reviews that I'm going to get from the people that are there.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that I truly love when I'm doing the farmers market is that when there are a few people at my booth, each customer will start talking about how great the chocolates are. And so I don't actually have to do any sales or marketing because they're just like building it up for the next customer. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things. But the other thing is I really enjoy meeting people, and I really just enjoy seeing the reaction that I get from them. Not so much just from the idea that this is good chocolate, but it's the stories that I'd like to instill or to excite from people. Because my truffles flavors are more unique, people are starting to kind of expand themselves a little bit more when it comes to the truffle flavors or just flavors in general. And people will generally start talking about an experience that they had with the particular flavor. And then that just it just starts becoming like a storytelling in front of my booth. And that's really what I really enjoy from the farmers market.
Yeah, that's nice.
Another pop-up. Yeah.
Yeah. On the note of flavors, and the differences that you strive for, that you have, where does the culinary aspect of all this come into your life?
It's just, I've always had an affinity toward food and cooking and just experimenting. So it comes a little bit more natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to creating new flavors, there's a lot of science behind it. So again, that's kind of where the engineering comes in, and the understanding of science and food science really comes into play. But a lot of the flavors is stemmed from an experience that I have, whether it's flavors that I grew up with, which is what the first few flavors that I released. There were mango and jackfruits, which is so common in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I wanted to entice. And then the next flavors kind of come in from desserts that I've had at friend's house. And then it led to people wanting to have flavors. And so I'm always listening to people's feedback. But the thing that I always try to do is that I always want to create a little bit of a twist to it. How do we connect this to a certain culture? How do we create a story behind this particular truffle flavors? And so that's what I always want to do.
You are quite creative. Let's see. I wanted to follow up with something, but I've lost it. Well, let me jump to a couple of things that I think are they're a little generic, but it's fun for me, and I think it's great for listeners to hear it. But assuming you hear them from time to time, what do you do to cope with the voices of self-doubt when they appear?
Oh my God, I hear that all the day, every day. So it's a challenge. Honestly, I am a perfectionist, and that makes it even more challenging to deal with. And as I mentioned earlier, I always like to have data before I proceed. And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, you're not going to have that, right? You're always going to be, to some extent, you'll have that once you have a business for so many years, right?
Sure.
For example, I'm going into my third year. I can take a look back at my first year and second year, what went well versus what didn't. But how to counter that, it's really, for me, I actually surround myself with a lot of entrepreneurs whether it is in the food industry or in the wedding industry or in, other industry, the challenges that we encounter are pretty similar, especially when it comes to self-doubt. It's, I think, universal for any entrepreneurs, I mean. And I think it also exists whether you're an entrepreneur or not, but it's going to be a little bit more hidden, right?
Sure.
When you're an entrepreneur, you're most likely working for yourself and by yourself, right? And so any demons that you had before, it's just going to be like magnified. So for me, I actually go to the gym a lot. I am part of a CrossFit gym. And for me, every time I go to my class, I feel like rejuvenated, right? So whatever I thought I couldn't do, I was like, oh, that was silly. Like, we don't have to conquer the world today, right? Let's just try to do one little thing. And if it goes well, let's proceed. If it doesn't go well, let's figure out what we need to change so that it doesn't become so awkward next time.
Yeah.
And I think for me specifically, when it comes to CrossFit, there's a lot of challenge that you put on yourself. You don't go to CrossFit to just maintain, maintain a workout with the same amount of weight that you had 3 months ago. You're going to constantly challenge yourself, but it's a self-challenge, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm competitive by heart, but so that kind of helps me, and then it transitions into my day-to-day job.
That's pretty cool. And where do you find the entrepreneurs where are your favorite places to find entrepreneurs to surround yourself with, to hang out with?
They're everywhere, honestly. So there is one particular group. It's called Tuesday Together. It's a free membership entrepreneurs meetup. It happens once a month, and they're mostly in the wedding industry. So that's, I think, like I said, regardless of which industry you're in, the challenges, especially like, let's say the operation side, like how do you make sure that when you get a request from a customer, you don't delay it so long that it doesn't seem like you're interested, right? Right. How do you make sure that everything kind of runs smoothly? That's something that is discussed there fairly well. As far as in the food industry, I rely like heavily on the ASBDC. So that is the Alameda something Business Development Center. So there's a food business course that was taught in that particular class, there's a series of food business course that was taught by a lady named Deegan Williams, and so I took a class there before I actually started my business, just to see if this was something that is suitable for me, and then continued on with the next level of course. So that's specifically for the food course. And then I've also taken classes with another lady named Allie Ball, and she's really, really good when it comes to pitching, like wholesale selling to grocery stores and whatnot. So those are kind of like the second, I guess the third set of groups. And then there's also a lot of chocolatiers in the United States. So we have a strong connection. So whenever I have issues with productions or, R&D, they are very, very helpful in figuring out what went wrong. So that's the other set.
I like that. And I remembered what it was I wanted to kind of give as a follow-up question to something we were talking about earlier, but it's on the subject of food science. Am I correct in assuming that when you had this crazy idea to become a chocolatier, that you had to go out and research the areas of food science that directly applied to what you're doing, or was that somehow something that you'd already had in your career?
No, I didn't have it in my career, and I actually didn't start the business with the knowledge of food science. I think I learned it as I went, because there's a difference when you're trying to make food, or in this specific case, truffles, for everybody at home versus trying to sell it to the public, right? When you're making it everybody at home, you can tell people to finish it in the next 2 days. But when you're trying to sell it, you have to make sure that your product is shelf stable. And there's definitely a lot of science behind that.
Yeah.
So when you're developing the recipe, you're not just like making it out of a whim and then hope that it will last long.
Yeah,
so, but I have a background in engineering, right? So I'm always interested in that, and being a manufacturing engineering, I'm always like, well, how do I make this more efficient? How do I ensure that this is stable batch to batch? Like, where do I get all these data? And then you just kind of rely into your chocolate group, and you kind of learn from there. And there's also a lot of books when it comes to recipe making, and you can just dive in deep on that as well.
I'm betting that for all the amazing things that I like to say 8-year-olds can teach us on YouTube, this is probably not one of them. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know. I actually think you could. Like, at least the tempering process you can.
Yeah.
But when it comes to chocolate, at least with my own experience, it can be very temperamental. So even though you've known how to temper chocolate during the summer, it may not work as well. You have to adjust things in the winter. So because of the different factors. But if you're just trying to make it for yourself, you can totally do it. If you're trying to make it as a business, then there's definitely things that you want to build on outside of YouTube.
Well, I can imagine. Okay, here's one more of these kind of common or canned questions I have for my guests as of late. I'm always trying to come up with new ones, and again, it's a lot of fun for me. But what is your biggest challenge today in this particular chapter of your business?
I think I'm going to give you two answers, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
I think when it comes to the business side is being able to be a quote unquote salesperson. Because I think at this point of my career and the part of the business, as I mentioned, trying to go and do more wholesale, that doesn't happen. People don't come to you. Well, they could, but it probably works better if you go out there and try to sell yourself, right? So I think I always have the stigma, well, because I'm an engineer, I don't know how to do this, right? So that's kind of one of the things that I am fighting, trying to counter in my head that I can do this. And so that I think it's essential for me to overcome that such that the business will grow. And then the second answer, it actually ties in really well to the first one, is that whole self-doubt. I think I'm still fighting it every single day. And I think if I don't put myself out there every single day, it can catapult into this like, oh my God, I can never do this. Right? So just having to just be present and be out there every day, whether you want it or not, because I think it'll eventually will break that conversation that is in your head. Even, like not half the time, most of the time, it's not true. So, but you just need to learn to kind of quiet it.
I love that. And now, if it wasn't already because of the series of questions, I'm sure, again, probably was already happening, that your weekly or daily CrossFit, whatever it is a constant reminder of that latter thing that you just mentioned. So thank you so much for your time. And I should, thank you on behalf of the Bay Area for creating beautiful art in your products that you make. So I know that people can find you and your business at charlottetruffles.com. And as I'd mentioned earlier, on Instagram at Char Truffles. Is there anywhere else or anything else that you would want people to know when they listen to this in the future?
Yeah, so I am also at the Menlo Park Farmers Market on Sundays. So that happens every Sunday. And I also do occasional pop-ups, and one of which I think in February I will do a pop-up at a winery in Gilroy. So look forward to more pop-ups at wineries, and mostly it's in the Bay Area. And then look, hopefully very soon you'll see me at some stores. So
well, I hope
look forward to that.
Yeah, I hope so. And I'm excited to hear that you'll be working with wineries too. It seems like a perfect pairing. Well, Charlotte, thanks again. I'll be talking to you again soon. Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard today, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you have a couple of extra minutes, please leave a review. It helps this podcast, and more importantly, it'll help other small businesses and entrepreneurs find the podcast so that they too can learn from the trial and error, the expertise, the insights of successful business owners like you. Are you struggling to get the word out about your business? Struggling to get in front of the right prospects at the right time? Head over to partnerforleads.blog to join our community. As a member, you'll get an occasional email from me with tips, hacks, stuff I'm learning from guests of this podcast. This is all stuff you can use to grow your business. It's free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Ciao for now.